neck of the woods. We've been traveling all over the state, taking our message of reform and change. You know, the problem with government at every level is it's lost touch with people. And I intend to change that in a meaningful way in South Carolina. I want term limits because we have got too many career politicians. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is the two primary candidates, the incumbent Republican, Haley, and her primary challenger, Vincent Shaheen, have both been at the State House for over a decade. And all they are worried about is their next political job and re-election. I am not a career politician. I don't believe our founding fathers in this country ever intended to have career politicians running the government. Because what happens is the longer these folks stay in office, the more entrenched they become with special interests. The lobbyists get to them, they start raising money for them, and before you know it, we've got a government that's totally out of control. And that's what's happened in South Carolina. We have a government that is totally out of control and totally has lost touch with our people and their needs. Let me ask you a question tonight. How many of you think that government is serving your needs? Raise your hand. If you think government is currently serving your needs, let me see your hand. I don't see any hands. And that's the problem. We have got to restore trust in state government. And I have a very simple way to do it, common sense approach. And it starts with term limits. A governor in South Carolina is capped at 2 terms, but what happens is they spend the first 4 years running for re-election. I would like to amend our Constitution and have 1 6-year term. 1 6-year term, and that's it. To keep that person focused on your needs and not her needs for re-election. Because what we have seen from our current governor is that she's spending more and more time raising money from special interests all over this country. In fact, almost half of her campaign war chest comes from out-of-state contributors, mainly large contributors, and lots of millionaires and billionaires. And that troubles me because I want a governor that is concerned about my state and our people. I want a governor that will stay in Columbia and work on our problems that need fixing, like our crumbling roads and bridges. And let's talk a minute about our infrastructure. If we're going to continue to attract quality industry to this state, we need good infrastructure. And that means we need a port in Charleston Harbor that can accommodate the big Panamax ships that are going to be coming through the Panama Canal now that it's been deepened. Those big ships need about 54 feet to draw into a harbor. Currently, Charleston can't accommodate it. And what happened? Instead of working to get the funds in place to deepen our port in Charleston and in Georgetown, our current governor cut a deal with the state of Georgia. And she went to a law firm in Atlanta. They raised about $18,000 for her, and she came back to Columbia the next day and asked her board, the Department of Health and Environmental Control, to reverse the staff recommendation that we not issue a permit to allow Georgia to dredge the Savannah River 23 miles upstream and dump the waste on us in Jasper County, toxic waste. She got her appointed board of DHEC to reverse their position. Why? I'm not sure why, except Georgia wanted it. They wanted to jump ahead of Charleston so that they get the Panamax ships. And guess what? They get the jobs. They get the cargo coming in to their state. And Charleston loses its competitive advantage. Now, you tell me how that serves South Carolina's interest, because 1 out of every 5 jobs in our state is tied to the Port of Charleston. You look at the manufacturers that have been successful, that Carroll Campbell brought to the upstate, BMW, Michelin, they get their raw materials through the Port of Charleston. They bring them up the interstates, they make the final product, and when those cars are ready to roll off the assembly line, they take them back to the Port of Charleston. That's where they go. They ship them all over the world. So that concerns me when we have a governor that's serving Georgia's interests instead of South Carolina's interests. That concerns me greatly. It also concerns me that Governor Haley promised us a strong ethics bill. She said that that was her #1 priority. But when the bill came up for debate this past session, where was Governor Haley? She was at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City, having drinks with her, quote, rock star hero, June Jett. And when the final day of the session rolled around and the House had passed the ethics bill and it was up for a vote in the Senate, there was one senator who was filibustering the bill. Where was Governor Haley? Again, she was out of state. That's not leadership, folks. That is not leadership. I'm sorry. I want to get a strong ethics bill passed in South Carolina. And the first thing we have to do is ban gifts. We need a gift ban to elected officials. There's no reason why any of our elected officials should be accepting gifts from people who want favors. And yet Governor Haley took over $100,000 in gifts last year, according to her own filing of the ethics review. In 1 year, over $100,000 in gifts, jewelry, football tickets, you name it. Why? Why? That concerns me. We need to rid the State House of these lobbyists and special interests and have representatives who represent your interests, not special interests, your interests. Somebody that cares about your problems. And government can't solve all the problems, and I don't want it to try. But there are a few core functions of government. One is infrastructure. You know, the Roman Empire was built on good roads and bridges and aqueducts. That is important, or a core function of government. And when I'm elected governor, we're going to fix our crumbling roads and bridges. Did you know that half of our secondary and primary roads in South Carolina are rated poor? Poor. Half of them by the Department of Transportation. We have the most dangerous rural roads in the nation. That's been documented. The most dangerous rural roads in the nation. We have over 1,550 bridges that are structurally defective. We had a bridge collapse a couple of weeks ago. We got 4.5 inches of rain up in Greenville where I live. I don't know if any of you saw the pictures, but those folks were lucky to be alive. There were 2 cars that fell in a hole where the bridge used to be. That's a small bridge, not an interstate bridge. It's on a rural road, and they're trying to repair it, and they will. But how many more bridge collapses are we going to have? We had one in Pickens County in the upstate not too long ago. That bridge has been closed for repairs. All the local people having to drive hundreds of miles out of their way to get to schools, and work, and doctor, pharmacy. How many more bridge collapses do we have to have before our leaders wake up and say, wait a minute, we need to fix these problems. Let's find a way. I think a smart way is to let some of our out-of-state tourists and truckers pay their fair share. What's wrong with that? Why put the whole burden on you? That's what Governor Haley and Shaheen want to do. They say, well, let's just take it out of the general budget. That's not right. That's not fair. We need to make sure that the people using our roads pay their fair share. Let the truckers who tear up these highways and interstates pay their fair share. They should. It takes the burden off of you. We shouldn't have to raise your taxes to pay for their roads when they're using it. It's common sense, it's a user fee. Now, I'm not gonna solve the problem entirely by that. I'm gonna look at other options. I think there are other ways that we can address this problem, but it needs to be fixed. For your family's safety, and your children, your grandchildren's safety, we want safe roads and bridges. We don't want bridges that are falling down, crumble. So that's a core function of government that I will fix. That's on the top of my agenda. And government really doesn't do anything very well, but when we ask it to do something, at least they should do it by standards. And I'm talking about the Department of Social Services. You know, I used to prosecute child abuse and neglect cases when I was in the prosecutor's office as a young lawyer. And I can tell you, there's nothing worse than seeing a young child abused or neglected at the hands of their natural parents. It breaks my heart. And I spent 3 years fighting for those children, and I've seen this. Their physical scars heal, but their emotional scars remain for a lifetime. They're scarred for life. And unfortunately, we see a cycle. If the child is abused, guess what? They're more likely to be abusive later on as parents. So what did Governor Haley do? She ignored the problem. The problem got out of hand. It's always been a problem, but it's gotten worse during her first administration. So what happened? Children started dying under her watch. And this is why I decided to run. I sent her 2 certified letters. And I know she got them because I got the little green card back that said she got them. And I asked her, I pleaded with her, this is before I decided to run. I said, Governor, please do something about your DSS appointee. There's no leadership at that department. The caseloads are too large. I've worked in this area. You cannot supervise 50, 60, 70 children with one caseworker. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Please fix this problem. It's not a hard thing to fix. No response whatsoever, her or her staff. Well, the problem gets worse. And finally, public hearings are held, an investigation is conducted. Not 1, not 2, 3 coroners come forward. Mitchell County, Lexington County, Sumter County. And they testified under oath before our Senate investigative committee that children were dying needlessly. DSS is not doing their job. They don't care. They're more concerned about the numbers, how they look at the numbers, than they are about these kids. And this was not a partisan attack. These were Republicans and Democrats who testified. There were also former supervisors who testified as well about how they were told, don't worry about placement. We want the numbers to look right. Of course, when they complained, they were fired. So there were whistleblowers out there that have called this to attention. So finally, after so much pressure, so much public pressure, Governor Haley didn't fire her. Guess what? She resigned. She resigned the day before she was supposed to testify for the second time before the investigative committee about what she had done or failed to do to protect these children. And that's the kind of government that I'd like to see changed. Nothing personal. I just want, where we have government involved, I want it to be efficient, effective, and limited. That's the way it should be. When I'm governor, that's the way it will be. I don't want to grow government. I want to reduce the size of government. I can tell you as a small businessman, I have to deal with forms every day. First, when I bought these radio stations, the first thing I got in the mail was a big old manila folder full of tax forms from the South Carolina Tax Commission. And you won't believe all the information they want to know. They want to know everything about all my employees, name, address, social security number, date of birth, how many hours a week they're working. What business is that of government? If I'm paying my taxes and I'm taking care of my employees and following the law, paying them a lawful wage, My goodness, why do they need all that information? Because you know what's going to happen. It's going to get hacked. I mean, that's what happened. That's what happened under Haley's administration. He got hacked. She was out of state, of course. She was out in the wine country in California. What happened? Waited 16 days to tell us it had happened. And then issued a no bid contract with Experian to do what? Let you know if you become a victim. So you can tell us to freeze your credit reports, which is really the only fix. I mean, you contact the three credit bureaus and say, I'm going to freeze my reports. And nobody can use your information to open your accounts with credit card fraud. No, they didn't do that. They'd rather have Experian send you a letter in the mail. You're a victim. I'm sorry. You need to check in your bank because somebody else is using your personal information in California to open new accounts. So I've got problems with that. I think we've not done enough to protect your personal information. You know, there are about 218 state agencies in South Carolina. Do you know how many have complied with Governor Haley's quote security fix? 218, 13 agencies have complied. Only 13. Why? She made it voluntary. Can you believe that? I mean, all these agencies have got all your information. Why should it be voluntary to fix? I mean, if anything should be mandatory, that should be mandatory. But once again, I want to offer a positive vision. I don't want to sound negative because I really am a positive person, and I want to present my vision for the state, and you decide. Because that's what I respect so much is two things. I learned this in my career as a judge. Two things that are a check and a balance on government. Two things: ballot box and jury box. When people start talking about you giving up your rights to do either one, you better be careful. They take away your, and it's a part of our state constitution, by the way, that you have a right to a jury trial. If somebody starts talking about mandatory arbitration, your antenna should go up. Because folks, that's not democracy. I believe in the ballot box and the jury box. That's the only way to check government. And when it gets out of control, we have to send them a message. Hey, don't forget about us. We're who you serve. We're paying those taxes, you know, that you're spending down there in Columbia. We like a little bit of transparency and accountability, as the governor likes to say. We'd like to know more about what's going on. So that's why I'm running for governor. It's great to be a South Carolinian. We have such a beautiful state, so much to be thankful for. We've got the beautiful coastline. We've got the black waters of the PD. Will and I crossed over this afternoon. Majestic Blue Ridge Mountains up in the area that I live in. We've got lakes. We've got the best barbecue in the nation. And certainly the best college football anywhere. I can't wait till we kick it off here in a couple of weeks, season of football. So, and we're truly blessed. So we need to fix these problems. The only way to fix it is we need leadership. We need a leader who cares more about you in the next election. Now, if you notice my gray hair, I'm not going to be running for many more offices. I don't have any career political plans. I want to fix these problems I'm talking about and go back home. That's my plan. When I fix these problems we've talked about tonight, you won't see Tom Ervin's name on the ballot. I'm going back home, spend time with my family, do my volunteer work, go to my church, which I love, try to help people in my local community. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Before we open it up for questions, Tom, I just wanted you to take a minute and address a couple of issues that I myself had. I know in reading your bio and doing some research on you, you had previously moved from the Democratic Party over to the Republican Party. And I know that your wife is very influential as well in her career and so on and so forth. And I think that heard, maybe both of you have contributed lots of campaign contributions over to the Democratic Party, and I'd just like for you to address, maybe talk about that for a moment, and also why did you wait, didn't run in the primary, decided to do it as an independent?
Good questions.
And then we'll open it up.
Very good. The question is, you know, when I was 28 years old, a long time ago, I'm 62 now. When I was 28, I ran as a Democrat. Back then, we had no Republican Party in Anderson County. In fact, there was not a single elected Republican official in my county. The politics at that time were the Democratic primary. I had a 5-way race. I led the ballot. 5-way race, had a runoff, won the runoff, and then I had an independent run against me in November, and I beat him. So that was the system in place when I ran. Later on, our state began to change, and it's a red state. And later on, my alliances to the party began to change because I no longer believed in the Democratic Party. My values, I am pro-life. I am pro-gun because I believe in the Second Amendment. I have a concealed weapons permit, and I'm a member of the NRA. And so, I'm fiscally conservative. So when I was in the legislature, I passed the balanced budget amendment to our state constitution, which is a part of our law today. And I passed the habitual crime bill, which says 3 strikes and you're out. And so I've always been a conservative. The Democratic Party left me. And so my values are more aligned with the Republican Party, which is why I voted in every Republican primary for the last 12 years. And if you look at my contributions, I have given much more to Republicans than Democrats. 10-1. The only Democrat that I gave to happened to be a college friend of mine. They called me and I couldn't say no. And in terms of my wife's involvement, she has a profession of her own, a life of her own. I don't necessarily control how she, decides to spend her money. In fact, she will tell you though that most of her contributions have been to Republicans as well. So, did I answer your question?
You did.
All right.
You did.
Good. And one more thing about parties. The reason you asked me why I skipped the primary, I knew that it's an uphill battle because I had no name recognition. And I'm running against an incumbent that has 100% name recognition. So I knew that I would need time to introduce myself to the people of South Carolina. And that's why I skipped the primary and chose to run as an independent. It wasn't easy to get 20,000 signatures, but we did it, and we got signatures from every county in South Carolina. I'm so proud of that. Every county in South Carolina is represented. And what I have come to learn is political parties, none of them look after our interests. I don't want to be bound by political party bosses. I'm sorry, they've never done anything for me. Maybe you see it otherwise, but they've never helped me do anything or accomplish anything. So in order to share my vision with the state, I wanted to be truly independent. I've taken no political action money. I've taken no special interest money. I've taken no out-of-state money. And I've largely financed my campaign from my personal savings. I am truly independent.
Thank you, thank you. Do you want to call on the folks with questions?
Sure, sure. Just raise your hand.
Mr. Ervin, you mentioned.
Call me Tom, please. Call me Tom.
You mentioned that one of the big duties of government is infrastructure.
Yes, sir.
I thought I heard you talk about a user fee.
Yes, I did.
And you put that in context of attracting business. You've got to have infrastructure to attract business. So I guess I want to ask about corporate income tax, where you feel about what we do with that. How do we attract business without bringing down those?
That's a great question, and part of I'm glad you asked it, because part of my plan is, part of my tax reform plan is to repeal the state individual income tax. I want to put more money back in the pockets of our working people so that you decide how to spend your money, not state government. So that's an important point to make, is I want to repeal the state individual income tax, and corporate taxes should also come down, for sure, because it's a tax that it's burdensome. I know because I'm a small businessman myself. And so we need to reduce regulations and taxes on small businesses. Now, our current governor is focused on these big, gigantic, international, multinational corporations. And take Boeing, for example. Boeing was coming to South Carolina anyway, because they wanted to get away from the unions in Washington State. I'm convinced that they would come here without incentives. But what did our governor do? She gave them over $1 billion in incentives. And we're talking about a multinational corporation that's on the Wall Street, big board, blue chip company that's paying a nice dividend, and they've done quite well. And I'm happy for them. I'm glad they're successful. But why would we take money out of the hardworking wallets of our people and pocketbooks of our people in South Carolina, $1 billion, and give it to a multinational corporation? It doesn't make sense to me. And those decisions, by the way, are being made behind closed doors. There's no transparency. You can't get the minutes of those meetings. The Department of Commerce are not available. Not available. I've got issues with that. And these job claims that she's making, those are, quote, announced jobs, meaning they may or they may not. You take Baltimore County, for example, she announced jobs in 4 different plants that never materialized. So we're going to be talking about these issues as we go forward. I think if we give somebody incentives and they don't deliver, if those jobs don't come, we should get our money back. Don't you agree? We should get our money back. If they're not willing to be good on their promise, we should get our money back. That's called a clawback provision. Most states are using that now. And by the way, North Carolina puts their incentives up on a website so they're transparent. You can go and see what a company got. We can't do that in South Carolina. It's a big secret. Nobody really knows.
Next question.
If I could just follow up, you said you want to repeal the state
State
income tax.
individual income tax, yes, sir. I do.
And what would be your plan to offset that income from the?
We will offset it in a revenue neutral way by expanding the sales tax base. Did you know that we're exempting more things than we tax, sales tax? So the tourists that come here, they buy a newspaper, they don't pay sales tax. If they buy diapers for the kids, they don't pay sales tax. That doesn't really make sense. Let's expand the sales tax and make up the money and give it back to you. That makes sense to me. Yes, sir.
Tom, right now, the state of South Carolina has a very low individual income tax. Though we rank about 33rd in the nation as a corporate tax burden.
Yes, sir.
There are many of us who believe that we could really attract business if we eliminated both the individual income tax and the corporate tax and went with a retail sales tax. What do you think of that idea?
I think that's a good idea, I really do. I've looked at the fair tax proposal, and I like it. Unfortunately, I don't know that we have the votes to pass it. That's the thing. You gotta be realistic. I'm trying to be realistic in terms of what we can pass. You know, if I saw the votes for fair tax, I think we should give it a shot, give it a chance. But there's some problems with it, but they could probably be worked through. But you're right, income taxes are not good for anybody, not good for businesses or individuals. So to the extent we can repeal them, I'm all for it. Yes, sir.
When I moved here from Seattle, Washington, no state income tax.
Right.
I had my taxes done here, I was retired, and I got a refund from the government. She said, by the way, you owe the state $1,200. I said, what? Came out of my retirement check.
Right.
Now, is there any way that people who are retired and not physically
Yeah.
working, they're living off what they're making, if they could cut out the income tax, state income tax
That's
from
what I'm talking about.
retirement?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that would
Several
help.
states have no income tax. Florida has no state income tax. Tennessee has no state income tax. We're competing with those states to get retirees to come to South Carolina. Why not repeal the income tax?
Yeah.
That way we get more military retirees. We get people that come and that will.
There's a lot to be done with the military.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Sir.
Yes.
There's a commercial on TV right now, a lady talking about being very critical of Governor Haley on the social children
Yes, ma'am,
thing.
yes,
Do
right.
you know that lady,
I
or
do
do you
not
have
know
any
her.
connection with
I
that?
do not know her, that's not my ad, but I believe that she's telling the truth about what's happened there. You know, I've been told that it's a truthful ad. I haven't seen any fact checkers say it's not true.
Do you know who's behind the ad?
I don't know. Yes, sir.
It seems
I
like.
met you this afternoon at
Yeah,
CBS.
I'm Mike
And
Hayes.
thank you, Mike, for coming tonight. I
I'm
invited
here.
Mike. Let's give Mike a hand for showing up.
Sorry I'm
I
late.
recruited a new member for it already.
Look, I've been here 7 years, and I really love South Carolina.
And you're an honorably discharged veteran, and thank you for your
Yeah, I
service.
was, well, a couple of years ago. But anyways, I'm a little bit concerned that the military has a big footprint here in South Carolina, but there seems to be a lot of friction between the state and Washington. And I just wondered how you would make that friction go away.
It's a great question.
So we could have more money coming down and not,
Right. It's a great
you know,
question.
stick it in their faces so
Yes.
much. I mean, it is about money.
Well, yeah, there's some things that we can do in our state to make it more attractive for veterans. There's a 10-point plan that veterans themselves have put out to say, you know, help us. And I won't go through all 10 if they're on the website, but I can tell you there are things that we can do to make it more veteran friendly, and I intend to do that because you're right. We do have a lot of military retirees in our state, and that's a blessing. You know, my hat goes off to any person who served their country. We owe them a special debt of gratitude for defending our freedoms. And how many veterans do we have here tonight? Let me see a show of hands. Well, thank you all. Let's give them a hand. Thank you all for your service to our country.
Do you support tort reform?
Yes, I do in certain areas. I think that there've been runaway lawsuits. We need to have checks and balances in place where a judge can review, a verdict that's excessive. In fact, those standards are in place now. We passed tort reform in South Carolina a few years back. I think it's working well. As a judge, I never saw a runaway jury. I trust yours. I found that it was fair. I found that their collective judgment that they brought with them from their everyday lives served us well. And so I think the last ranking was that South Carolina is now the 5th most friendly state in the nation for business. And that's a great record. Yes, sir.
What concerns me is, and I'd like your thoughts, is that by you running, it's going to be one Democrat and 2 Republicans. You're going to split the Republican vote.